Welcome to the Future Proof Leader podcast. I'm Jessica Raypatch, CEO and co-founder of Twin Legacy Solutions. Today, we are here with Nick Musica. He is an executive coach and I already messed this up. Nick Musica, he's an executive coach and operational consultant. Welcome, Nick. Thanks for coming on the show. I'm so excited to talk with you today. I'd like to start it off by you just kind of telling us what your business is, who you work with, what's your mission.
Howdy, Jessica. Good morning. Yeah, so my name is Nick Musica. I'm an executive coach, operational consultant. I work with founder-led companies, founders in these companies, who at some point had the experience of not growing the company anymore. They're still doing the same things that got them to where they are. They grew the company from whatever, 500 to a million to 10. The number doesn't matter. What matters is there's a pattern that shows up where we keep on doing the same things, but we don't get the results from it. And eventually the conversation happens and it sounds a little bit like this. It sounds like, oh, you've created something that you're suffering in because they're working longer hours. The team may not be showing up the way they want to show up. So there's a few different on-ramps in terms of that exploration of what's happening. Sometimes it's the executive coaching, sometimes it's working with the teams, sometimes it's taking a look at the operating system of the company itself.
So you work with startups all the way up to big corporations.
Well, folks who have past the startup phase, right? We have a product, it's proven out, we know what we're doing, we're looking to scale it, and also not corporations. So more family run, founder run companies.
Gotcha. Okay, that's awesome. Okay, so the topic today is called execution over excuses, the real work of scaling a business. So I have so many questions for you that I came up with some personally to myself I want to know your opinion on, and others just a lot of questions people ask on the general.
Yeah.
Okay, so a lot of leaders are talking about scaling, right? But from your perspective, what does real scaling actually require that most people underestimate?
Yeah, I from my experience, it goes back to looking at our operating system, looking back to how we get things done. And so here's the simplified journey of how we got to non-growth. We have a couple folks doing things start to work out. We cobble on more folks. We're all doing as much as we possibly can, as fast as we possibly can. We all go to the leader to go, now this, the next thing we should be doing. Yes, and we keep on going, right? So rinse and repeat, rinse, repeat, rinse, repeat. And at some point, oh my God, we're making a lot of money. And then, oh my God, we're not making more than what we were making. So we need to, and this is, I've heard this so many times. It is so good just to sit in front and have questions asked and have time to think about where I am, what I'm doing, and how is it working out. I'm sure the audience is familiar with Simon Sinek's Start With Why. I think that's the name of the book, right? Start With Why, but the why, which is mind-blowing. And I'm a fan of his work. I love his work. But for the question of why to be like this enormous conversation, our culture is broken. If we're not really understanding why we're doing a thing and we're just constantly acting on doing the thing, maybe we should take a pause. And so that pause is around how are what we're doing? What has stopped us from the growth? And it could be a couple things. It could be how the leader shows up. It could be how the team is showing up. It could be the lack of expectation. It could be the accountability that's not there. It could be the lack of a specific North Star that we're all tracking our work against. It could be varied, but all those things are typically at play.
So how easy is it for you to diagnose something like that? When you walk into a company, is it pretty apparent or is it something that you have a process for diagnosing?
So there is a process, and there are things we do throughout a engagement. But the tricky thing is, how disruptive do we want to be? Because there's a pain, we're going through pain right now, and the pain's typically not going to stop if we keep on doing what we're doing. And if we say we're done with the pain, we want to do things differently, and we want to fix what's happening here so we can grow the business from a $6 million company to a $12 million company, or whatever it may be. And if we fix the problems at $6 million, we're hedging our bets for the 12. Because we're going to get more efficient. People will know what they do when they show up, why they're showing up, what we're all working for. We're going to have quarterly objectives. We're going to have annual objectives. So the trick is to understand where are the lowest hanging fruit, where are the biggest areas where we can push on, because we know it's going to get uncomfortable. And there's some systems, they come in and they go, A through Z, this is what we're doing. And that can work. It could work. And that may be highly disruptive as well. But to work with the founders to lay things out and go, so here are the places that need upgrading. I think these are the three areas with the highest leverage for us. Because once you start hitting a domino, they're all going to fall. But sometimes the order in which they fall is very important.
I think you hit it right on the head because I've been in corporations where I've been in both situations. I worked in corporate America and we'd have people come in and even with system implementations be like, okay, this is how it's going from A to Z and this is what we're doing. And it's like, oh, that doesn't work for everybody. You know what I mean? Like we have so many different departments that do different things. Your A to Z method is very disruptive. And I feel like with change management, this is always coming up in our podcast with the CEOs and founders. Change management is one of those really big pain points. And if you are going to drive change, you do have to have a gentle approach to it. So I am with you in that when I'm implementing something or I'm being a part of an implementation, starting at like the high level of what are the biggest things we need to do. Let's address those first. Once we have that under control, we'll do this second layer. Once the second layer is good, then the third layer. It's attainable. It feels attainable. You don't get the overwhelm. The workers in a situation where you need to do a new implementation or a new process, they're already burnt out.
Yeah.
So the A to Z method for me, I don't think ever works or doesn't come across, especially for people that are underneath me, like when I've managed projects, it just never goes over well. So I like the strategy that you guys use coming into a corporation, because the last thing you need to, like you said, they're already paying, they're already suffering, and now you're going to implement this whole system without any, not input, but like any consideration for what they're
That's
already
right.
going through. It's the
Totally.
consideration,
Yeah. And so there will be friction with the change management, but to
Of
avoid
course.
unnecessary friction,
Right.
right?
There's
Because
got to be a
proven
little
system,
friction.
the system is good for the consultant.
Right.
I know exactly what I'm doing month by month, day by day. I show up and I do the thing, and then and now it's on you, Jessica, right?
Yep.
And now I hold you accountable. But if it's let's talk about the company, let's talk about who's in the seats, let's talk about where we are, where we want to be in the next 12 months. Those are 5 different conversations right there. And
Right.
now we get to choose what is most important in order to start to bring the company along so we can get the best result we can with the least amount of friction.
Right. And I feel like you get more buy-in as well because people don't care. I mean, honest truth is people just don't care about the goals of the company, the profitability of the company when you're working just to come up for a paycheck. A lot of people, I've worked with all levels. They're like, what do I care if the corporation goes from $1 million to $1 billion? I just come here, I do my job, I go home, I get to be with my kids or do whatever. They don't have any buy-in. But when you have a gentle approach like that, there's a little bit more buy-in and like the why behind it. Like you said, that's like anything in life, you should have a why behind everything you're doing. So I like that methodology as well. Okay, you emphasize a lot about execution accountability. I like that you're a coach, that you have processes, but then you're pretty big on holding people accountable in the execution side, which a lot of coaches out there, they have a lot of good processes and efficiency strategies for leaders, but you hold their foot to the fire, which I love. Why do these execution and accountability factors, why do they break down so often, I guess is the question.
So there's a few ways to answer the question. So why don't we take a look at it from the one-on-one coaching perspective first? So at the end of a coaching session, and this may not happen every time, but the majority of the time it should happen, is we talked about the situation, we talked about what we want to get out of the conversation, why it's important to you, and at the end of the conversation, near the end of the conversation, we go, so what are we going to do about it, Jessica? What's going to happen? And I was just at a conference a week or two ago, and it's this group accountability dynamic. We had a breakout. Okay, now go get into a couple tables, and we're reviewing what we're going to do in the next X amount of time. And there's someone at the table who's like, I'm doing all the things. Okay, well, what does all the things look like? All the things. Well, let's just really get specific about it. And we get to SMART goals, like be specific, measurable, actionable, right? That whole thing.
Yeah.
And we start to narrow it down, but you can see the discomfort locking into the commitment, which is great. And we don't have to lock it in if it doesn't feel good. We want it to be obtainable because it's not a one and done. This is 3 months or it's 6 months, maybe it's a year contract. And if you do the right things over a period of time, you tend to get a good result. So we're just looking to get some amount of momentum going. What are we going to do? And can we do that in 2 weeks? Great. Okay. We know exactly what we're going to do. We know it's going to happen in 2 weeks. What's your confidence level on that? Like, how committed are you? Some individuals like 7. Oh, okay. Something's not going to work right out of the gate. Something's not going to work. So what do we need to get clear on to make that a 10? Is it scope? Is it time frame? Is it the number of the things in the bucket? Like, what is it where we don't want base hits. We've got to stretch a little bit. But if we're like home run every time and then we come up short every time, like we lose motivation. That's not going to help us out. So going back to what we're doing, how it's going to get done, and then the time frame, Jessica, like, can you do that? And at the end of the 10 weeks, we're going to come back together and one of two things are going to happen. Did it? It was cool. Here's how it worked out. Or it was cool, got a little bumpy, or life came in. Life happened. And so life is going to happen, but let's take all those anomalies out of the way. We want to hedge your bets for a good result.
Right. So I have an off question. I mean, not an off question, but so you see the guy at the table, you're like, he's going to do all the things. So what I see a lot when I get to talk to a lot of founders and CEOs, which is so cool. But I think we all admit that we're all a little bit ADHD in a sense where we want to go, 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 go. So
Yeah.
how do you slow founder or CEO down? Because that's all, I mean, you founded a company, you want a hard charge, you want to get your margins, you want to do better than you did last month. But how do you just say, listen, client, you need to slow down, focus? Like, how do you get them to do that?
So similar concepts to the one-on-one as applied to the organization. What are we doing and when are we doing it? What exactly is happening and who's doing what? Because when we define what is important, and we can't, but you know what's important, Jessica? One, two, three, four, five. What's the priority? They're all priority, all important. Well, that's impossible. But it just can't be that way. So at the end of three, I mean, the smaller company, maybe we're looking at 3 months. Larger companies or bigger initiatives, we're looking at 6, 12 months. But at the end of 3, 6, 12 months, what does it look like to land that plane? How do we know we got there?
Yeah.
And if we're not all in alignment, going back to accountability, if we're not all in alignment around what we're doing, then it's really easy to say, I don't understand how this didn't happen. Well, person A was off doing priority one, person B was off doing priority two, etc. So why do these things not get done? Because there was simply no alignment. We never said what was a good idea. We never defined what good meant. We never defined what it meant to be successful to land that plane. Typically, the conversation going back to the suffering, like we're not suffering, we're making $6 million. Are you missing your goals? Does everyone know why this company exists? Do they know why they're showing up? Because we're all moving pixels one way or the other. But it really helps to have something that we can all talk about. And when we're all reviewing how the company is doing, we all get a stake into my contribution to that thing.
100%. So having defined deliverables, defined levels of success, measuring that but then also when a CEO is hard charging forward, you actually asking the questions like, okay, let's talk about each one and how you're going to accomplish it. Deer in the headlights, usually, because it's like you want to do all the things, but like, let's talk about one. What would that take? And just kind of breaking down the tasks.
That's right. And if it's not one, it's certainly going to be two where you start to see it unravel.
Right. Because, yeah, we all want to do all the things, but it gets overwhelming. So, but you mentioned accountability. So at what point does accountability become the biggest bottleneck for success
When
or
we
for growth?
start to, yeah, for growth, when the frustration of not accomplishing our goals, assuming we actually have goals,
Right.
different can relate. When we start to realize shit's not getting done and we start to want to blame people, which is sort of an inclination, and it could be the team, the broader team, it could be the leadership team, it could be self, whatever it is. It's helpful. What's helpful is how are we here? What was everyone working on? And if no one can say we were all working on X to support Y, having a North Star, having a goal, having commitment, having a declaration, a vision, mission, right? Pick whatever word you want to use, but a thing the company is focused for a limited amount of time, then there is no accountability. Then the execution is fragmented. Then we're all off running around like little kids chasing a ball, but we're not all focused on actually doing a thing. I mean, sports is a wonderful metaphor. There is one goal at the end of that game,
Oh,
right?
yeah.
Everyone has a position. They show up to do the thing. If the ball gets fumbled, right? If we're using football as a metaphor, then it doesn't matter what your position is. Get the ball, right? Control the ball. But until things are off the rails a bit, we all know exactly what we're doing. It's operational. Be operational, and then your job as the leader is to remove the barriers to success. I don't have the people. I don't have the budget. I'm not getting responses from vendors or internal. Okay, let's go solve that problem.
That's good. Now, I would imagine as companies start to scale, that teamwork gets a little bit more complex, right? So what's the biggest mistake leaders are making when trying to maintain alignment during that process?
So as we're scaling, there's folks who are going to be used to doing very specific things in very specific ways. So understanding who the team is on day one, what the goals are, arbitrary deadline, 12 months out, what the team looks like 12 months out, what it takes to get there. You may have some folks doing 5 things on day one. Well, that may work 12 months later, but there may be a point where transition happens where we're not doing 5, they're doing 4, 3, 2, or one primary thing. Maybe they're managing a group of folks doing those 5 things. So understanding how the team needs to evolve to continue to go get those goals, because we're all used to operating in very specific ways. I remember the first time young in my career when someone's like, so what is it going to look like in 12 months? And I was like, didn't even understand the question. I do this every day and I show up and I hamster wheel each and every day, right? Like, I don't make any sense. Like to have time to think about what you're doing and where we're going, to afford that to yourself and to your team is mandatory. And a lot of folks just keep on running the hamster wheel.
Well, what does that look like as assessment wise for a CEO? When you're scaling your business, the teamwork, the alignment, does it a monthly check-in? Is it every quarter? How do you sustain the movement to make sure you're not stagnant?
Yeah, well, it depends on the entry point and it depends on the SOW. So if we're talking about one-on-one coaching, it's going to be every 2 weeks typically. We touch base and what we're doing, how we're moving things. If it's going to be a 6 or a 12-month engagement with the team, we're getting into what's the level of touch points that I'm on site or on phone or whatever it is. Typically more upfront because of that habit change. And you have one person come in, they say, here's how you solve all the problems. It's not what I say, but like it could easily be heard that way. And then they leave. And then what do? Like we go back to how we're doing things. So to have that accountability of we're going to check in a week or two to see how the meeting went. We're going to check in 2 or 3 weeks to understand how we're keeping work visible and to understand what it looks like when the team goes, what are we doing here? Because no one likes change. And how did you respond to that? And now where are we now? So that support throughout, because it will be disruptive. There will be folks who don't want to get on board. It's just how it works.
Well,
and what
no,
do
we
we do?
need it over time for a month and then something new, some new something. Teams, bring them in, implement the system, do a little training, fired them all. And I said, what are you doing? What's going to happen in a month when the system goes down? Who's going to fix it? Well, I don't know. I did some research and it's like they've built millions of these systems and they've never been able to maintain them because a problem arises a month later, they can't fix it, and there it goes. So that's my IT analogy, but that's the same thing with the team, right? So I can't imagine you hire a coach, executive consultant, and then they come in, they give you this huge strategy. And you're like, okay, bye, Nick. Cool. Well, no, it's a long-term commitment. It's an ongoing support. It's an ongoing relationship. And I would imagine you probably learned that business quite well over time, right?
I mean, you certainly learn things you didn't expect to learn. That's part of the nature of it, right? When you ask, well, how does that work? Right. And when we're digging into process and systems, well, how does that work? And sometimes people do it so rote, like they don't even know what they're doing, which is fascinating. So now we're breaking down the steps in a process as an example. And in the meantime, we're actually developing training material, at least the starting points for training material, right? So you do that. And to go back to like, well, do you just parachute in and parachute out? No, it's not going to be effective. And there's a couple things that show up in terms of involvement. So more involvement on day one, less involvement on 365. When you start to see the embodiment of what we're talking about here taking hold, and when you start to hear the language coming back at you, those are the signals for me of, okay, like little hands off the wheel. But until then, you're still talking the same language. You're still operating the same way. And you're still going to get the same results. But when you start to see that, it's a cultural shift. When you start to see that cultural shift, like now we're actually moving towards transformation.
Right. Well, and as your methodology goes, right, you're not attacking everything at once anyway. You're come in,
That's right.
do the high priorities, get that flowing and stable. Level 2, same thing. So I get it.
That's right.
Now, I want to talk a different topic a little bit is obviously AI is a huge conversation on this podcast. So from your perspective, as you work with clients, how are CEOs and founders handling AI? And how is that, what patterns are you seeing that they're going to approach it?
The headline is varied.
Yeah,
very,
that's
very
common,
varied.
right?
I have folks who haven't touched it and things are relatively fine.
Yeah.
I have a recruiter in my network and I asked him, I said, so like, really, what do you see? You have a very interesting perspective of the world. What are you seeing in terms of the impact? And he's like, not a lot. I'm not seeing a lot. So that's his purview. I got an email yesterday from folks I work with and they're like, we're doing AI. Here's what it looks like. The thing that I've seen, the important thing that I've seen is what are we doing with it and why are we using it that way versus this top down of use it. What does that even mean? What does that mean? Right.
Yep.
But when we have problems, if you give your folks, and it goes back to decision making and accountability, and there's a bunch of factors in here. But if you gave folks the to wonder about how they can use it without farting around all day on it, how can you use it to improve pieces of your process? It could be terribly disruptive in a non-productive way. It could be a distraction, or it can be very, very because my God, it just took all this busy work out of my way. And conversation for what, 5, 10 years, I don't know, has been VA Well, it can be a really good VA. Not perfect, but VAs aren't perfect either. Interns aren't perfect. To do low-level repetitive work and train it so it gets smarter on that. I had a conversation with a gentleman yesterday, and it was impressive. And he was excited, and his systems are working better. And he's a small business owner. And things sounded very, very, he's been spending 6 months at least on learning it. What does it do? Experiment one, experiment two, like, and not distraction, but like looking for solutions or problems that he has. Some of them worked out better than others, and gotten to a place where it sounds like he has systems that are working for him, and he's not pushing against the hype of AI. He's able to harness quite a bit of it and do something really cool for himself.
Yeah, I mean, so I definitely get mixed responses as well, but I have the most prevalent response I get is, yeah, Jessica, I know my employees are using AI. And then my question is, well, what are your policies and procedures to protect your company from the implementation of the AI to any degree, whether they're using ChatGPT to write emails or stuff, or do some of their administrative work, their tasks, their reports. How are you handling that? And they're like, I don't know. Like, there's no clear guidance. So when you work with companies, is that something you help CEOs and founders with, like how to mitigate risk with AI or how to implement it like in a good way?
Yeah, there are folks who are way more suited to have those conversations than I am. They know how it works way better than I do. And the folks who are at the head of the game don't know where we're going with all of it and can't answer all the questions.
No.
I was sitting with a gentleman a couple months ago, and I was like, I've heard a couple things that are rather terrifying. I've heard reports are being generated, and then 6 months later, it just made up all the numbers. How do we have that not happen? There was a professor, and all of his work got destroyed. It just got eaten. And in one of the conversations recently, someone who was very happy with AI, downloaded has access to the computer. That's a lot of access. It's a lot of access. So there seems to be some amount of risk tolerance associated with all of this. The more access, the more risk tolerance. And it doesn't seem like it's the likely story, but will your information be leaked? Maybe that's more likely than not. I don't know. But will it just nuke your computer?
No, I don't
I don't know. But like someone out there said my work is gone. So at least one person. I'm glad it's not me.
Yeah. We get a mixed bag. Well, we're IT company, right? So we get a mixed bag. We have people that are technically savvy and they can understand like, oh yeah, like it's cool. I know how to use it. This is how, we're very minimal. But then we do get the that's like, everything's gone, blah, blah, blah. But it's really not gone. It's up and we know how to do it. But there is definitely a risk. And I think CEOs and founders should be definitely establishing at least procedures and policies to be put in place for the usage of AI. The topic of competitors comes up too, though. A lot of CEOs and founders have a fear that their competitors are going to start implementing AI, which they are, to kind of streamline all the administrative work and those like kind of lower level tasks, like you said. I don't think AI should be a big thing in your company for like strategy and strategic operations and creativity. I think that humans will never be replaced for that. Like you just get the years of experience from AI, right? It's not that personal. But the lower level tasks, we see tons of corporations and companies starting to implement those and saving a lot on their operational time. So what will happen when people kind of don't jump on the bandwagon? Because even IT systems that we know and love today, they all are starting to embed AI, whether you know it or not. Everything's getting embedded in there. How do you handle that risk mitigation? I always like to ask people working with companies if they're hearing those fears or like, how is it feeling out in the
Yeah. You and I should talk more about that. I think
Yeah,
it'd be helpful.
Yeah, for sure. Okay, so I have to leave it with a cool question. So if leaders are listening, which I hope they are right now, and they're feeling stuck, what is one uncomfortable decision that they probably need to make right now?
Oh, it's a good one. So I started working for a company a while back, and a gentleman who hired me started to give me some guidance. It was pretty great. And I asked a couple questions, and he said, I'll share this one experience I have with the CEO. Okay, great. The CEO comes to him and starts to identify this problem. And he says, who's responsible for this? And the gentleman who brought me into this company goes, you are for this. Silence.
You didn't know?
No, didn't want to look at it, whatever it may be. So I would say the decision is to want to be willing to look at it. And so let's start with you, how you show up, your personal operating system. I start every engagement I have with folks using a Harrison assessment. It's behavioral assessment, measures 175 characteristics. What do I prefer to do? What do I avoid? And that That's a lot. And we get to see our operating system staring back at us, and we see how we show up. And when you see how other people on the leadership team show up, you start to see themes around what's getting done, why it's not getting done, or it is getting done. But it's start of looking at yourself. If we're not going to do that, nothing's going to change. If we're not willing to look at ourselves or organization or leadership team, nothing's going to change.
That honesty, the honest
The
truth.
vulnerability of it all. Yeah,
Yeah, completely. Yeah, and how I'm assuming that's how you scale. Identify the weaknesses.
that's it. Yeah.
Well, awesome. Nick, I had a lot, and I really appreciate you being on the show. Where can people find you? CEOs, founders, looking for an executive coach? I highly, of course, I'm biased, but I highly recommend any leader that's looking to be just successful in their brand have some kind of consultant, expert. We're no experts. We're experts in our own fields. I love IT and stuff like that, but strategic execution leaders like yourself, where can they find you?
Yeah, yeah. You can reach out to me on LinkedIn, Nick Musica on LinkedIn, easy to find there. If you have an organization, if you're not a solopreneur, as an example, and you're wondering, well, what's my basic health doing right now? What does it look like? The health of my organization. You go to nickmusica.com. There's a leadership assessment. It takes all but 5 minutes to do. It is run by AI. It is uncanny how good it is.
Awesome.
And it is typically a start of a conversation, and the spirit of AI, did it get it right? Would you agree with this? Let's talk about these this assessment. So bring it internal, hit me up. We could talk about it, whatever it looks like, but start to look at the organization through using a tool or some other tool.
I love that. Well, I'm going to take it for sure. Why not? The honest truth. Well, thank you so much, Nick, for being on the show again. And to our listeners, thanks so much for tuning in today. And until next time, have a great day.